every age, every stage has its own challenges. And I feel like parenting is something that has drawn me so much closer to the Lord. Like, I can't do this on my own. Just times when I've been like, God, you've got to help us to know how to walk through this with them.
Yeah. And then especially as they got to be these adults, I can look at it and I see, oh, wow, God, I see how you're working in that. It may not be exactly like I thought it was going to be, but I've seen how God has answered prayers. And I think those prayers can change, but the essence of those prayers, that doesn't change, because what we want is for our children to have a close personal relationship with God.
Through it all, I think I wanted my children to be who God created them to be. But I am in that stage where I can look at their lives now and think, God created them to be that way, and now He's using them.
Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the podcast where we deep dive into Sunday's message and explore your questions. I'm your host, Astin Kahnk, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. Whether you're a longtime member of The Orchard or a first-time visitor, Let's Talk About That is your space to explore, reflect, and connect. Join us as we navigate the intricacies of faith, spirituality, and daily life, seeking to understand how the wisdom shared on Sundays can be applied to our modern challenges. So, grab a cup of coffee, find a comfortable space, and let's dive in together. This is Let's Talk About That, where the conversation about Sunday's message never stops. Well, welcome back to Let's Talk About That. You guys asked for it, and the whole month of July, Momcast is taking over this podcast. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll be hearing from different ladies from across our 3 Orchard locations as we talk about marriage, faith, life, and motherhood. And I am so excited to kick off the Momcast takeover with 3 special ladies from our Branford location. I'll let them go around the table and introduce themselves. Just let our listeners know who you are and who you're married to.
Hey, I'm Cara Howard. I'm married to Johnny, and we have 2 grown daughters.
And you are the Branford Kids Director, right?
Kids coordinator.
Kids coordinator, yeah.
Yes.
We love you. Love her.
I am Carla Collins. I'm married to Tim, and I have 3 children.
What are your kids' names?
Kyle, Trevor, and Kinley.
Love it.
Hi, I'm Beth Blalock. I'm married to Eddie. We have 2 grown children who are probably the age of you ladies. I have 10 grandchildren, and some of them are the age of Astin.
Yep.
So I've kind of been at it for a while.
Yeah, I love it. And so, Miss Beth is the OG, the original Pastor Eddie's wife. We love Pastor Eddie and Miss Beth. And so, just so thankful for y'all to be on the podcast and just talk about motherhood and marriage and life and all those fun things. So I'll go ahead and jump right into the conversation. So thinking back to when you ladies were in the trenches of raising young kids, what were just some daily, spiritual disciplines or things that kept you anchored when you were starting to feel depleted or overwhelmed? Because I'm definitely in that season of life. So anything you have, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, so one thing that I did was there's not a lot of time when you're in the trenches and kids are little and you're in that toddler age. Yeah. So I found an app. I actually think one of my friends recommended it, and I think it was called First 5.
Okay.
And it was like a daily devotion, but you could do it in 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
And so I would use that. It's hard to start your day. I really always wanted to start my day, earlier than the kids and have that great spiritual time in the morning.
We've talked about how it can't be quiet time. It's got to be, private worship because it is not going to be quiet.
Right. But it's hard to do that, especially when you're tired and you have kids that maybe aren't sleeping through the night. So, but I could find that I could carve out 5 minutes of the day for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I feel like that's where I'm at right now because my morning starts 6 o'clock right when the baby wakes up and it's like, where has the day gone? But I may have to try that day. You said, is it First 5 or Daily 5?
First 5.
Is that not Lisa TerKeurst? Is she the one that?
I think she is.
Is she
that does that? Yeah.
Actually, I think I have that on my phone. I might need to redo that, rewatch it, re-listen to it.
And then not, focusing so much on lengthy prayers either. I would just pray as I'm going throughout my day. Lord, watch over my children as I drop them off at school.
Yeah.
Be with me, while you're folding laundry or something, just little prayers that you kind of say as you're just breathing through your daily things through life.
Okay. That's good. What about you ladies?
I don't ever remember having my wonderful sit down quiet time when I was raising kids. I did the same thing. My time with Jesus was all throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Some of those days might have just been like, Lord, help me, Jesus.
Give me the strength right now.
So there was those moments. But as far as with my children, I always went to, it was back when there was the Christian bookstore. And I remember some of our times was always, I just would buy those little simple kid devotion type things. And your day might not go perfectly starting off with them at breakfast time, but I just always used them at the mealtime because we always had meals together at the table.
Which I
that was very important.
Yes.
And I did that throughout their lives. My home was mealtime. I mean, of course, sports as they get older, but as many times as we could be around the table.
Yeah.
And so around the table was the time that we would do the devotion time and talk things over and pray, other than the times you sit with them at night and pray with them in the bed and stuff. But so I did definitely try to have those times with them, but my time was scattered throughout the.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, I was kind of basically the same way. I had devotionals that I would read, that kind of thing. Just try to start early in the morning like everybody else. But it was just kind of hit and miss sometimes. But I did always try to pray during the day, like y'all, small prayers. I had started doing first 5 when Cara said that about, a friend of mine told me an app when my kids were little, and I thought, an app? I found the app like just a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hey, come on. We did not have any of that when my kids were little.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would try devotionals. I tried devotions reading with them, I said, okay, I'm going to start it now, today. Today I'm going to do it. We're going to do it at mealtime or whatever. And it would go for a little while. And then things would get hectic and I wouldn't do it, So I guess the one thing that we did was, like maybe during the day, if they were there, and just try to point out things, look what God's done.
That's good. Yeah.
Look at the tree. God made the tree. I mean, of course, when they're preschool.
Yeah.
But at night, it was always a time of prayer, just in their room, in their bed, just to kind of one-on-one, praying. And like I say, for me, probably once the kids got older into school, there was more of a schedule, I was able to get up earlier.
Yeah.
And because, that's when the day was going to start.
Yeah.
And so I still do that. I will say I'm probably not a real morning person. I can look around here and I can see Carla's a morning person. I'm not sure about Cara. Astin, I kind of think, but I'm definitely not.
Yeah.
I like to get things done early, but I don't want to talk or anything like that. So even now, I still get up before 6 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to have my quiet time.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. So thinking about, being in those trenches and having young kids, how did you ladies, and I need all the wisdom because I feel like I'm sitting in this right now, but how did you ladies learn to move from striving to have the quote unquote perfect Christian home to just resting in God's peace and sovereignty? Because I know, especially for me now, you have the social media aspect. You see all these people that have the perfect homes. And obviously, that's a small glimpse of it. But still, I see that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have the whole perfect, meal prep for my kids. A lot of the times Lucy's breakfast and lunch might be the same thing. And so it's like, how do you move away from trying to be this perfect Christian home to just, resting in God's peace and sovereignty?
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So when my kids were little, my personality is very type A probably. And so I was always, Eddie calls me still his rule keeper, and I try to get away from that.
Yeah.
He'll say, I know it kills you to walk across that street and that little hand is up and telling you not to move. I say, yes. So, but at home, I still, I thought, okay, this has worked for me. So it'll work for my family. Days that I cleaned, days that I did laundry, days that, all the toys had to be all picked up and everything. And finally, I realized one day, I know it was God probably speaking to me saying, listen, that is not so important. And you're going to drive your kids crazy if you keep up this kind of schedule.
Yeah.
And so he did move me away a lot from that, having that perfect house.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when people came over, I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a mess,
Yeah.
I still do that.
Yeah.
But I did have to move away because I had to think about my children too. And of course, my husband. But having that perfectly groomed home or perfectly groomed yard I had to learn that is not where it's at. It is speaking into our kids' lives, just having time with them. But as they grew up and got into the teenage years, that was harder for me as far as people's perspective.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Because I felt like my kids, the way they acted, behaved, the way other people saw them was a reflection on me.
And see, I feel that right now.
Yeah.
With my 4-year-old who is learning how to do. I totally feel it now. Yeah.
But I really felt it, I guess, when they were teenagers. For one thing, when they were young, we lived out in the country, and it was a very small community. And then as we moved to Branford, the kids were older. And we were like 2 blocks from the school. And, and we would have people, I'll just say, we would have people come to Eddie and say, well, I heard so-and-so, that this is what was going on. Finally, he spoke up one day and said, listen, if you can't tell me for sure that you know this, or that you can't tell me who it was, then we don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So I struggled with that a lot, And finally, the Lord was just like, this is not about you. This is about your children.
Yeah.
You got to pray for your children. You got to just teach them what you know and let me handle the rest.
Yeah.
And don't worry about how it's going to reflect, which is very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard not to think about that. But, that was a lot of burden I think I was putting on my kids, too, that they had to be a certain way.
Yeah.
So that was hard. But he eventually, through his patience with me, I think he moved me away from that. And I had to realize that this was about their walk. And I just had to pour into them what I believe was the Word of God and how I believe that God would expect us as Christians to behave.
Yeah.
And try to leave it at that.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. Very good. Because I'm thinking, I'm just now getting there where you just said, those things you just said. Because in the beginning, my personality, when my kids were little, was like, we're just doing our thing over here. But the only time I ever worried about my house was when, God love her, my mom came, because, she's a lot neater than I am. Now, I've moved into neatness, through life. But as far as those things that Miss Beth said, I did that too. Like, as they kept getting older is when I started worrying more. And I'm worrying more about what people thought and people judging my decisions on how I'm raising them spiritually. And I said those statements to my children over and over about, you are a reflection of, us. And I said that over and over. And until you just said that, I'm thinking, I really realized how much pressure that probably was for them. But I would say that all through those teenage years. But I'm just now getting to the part where I've spent some time, and college years were not some of my favorite years of raising my children. And I spent a lot of tears and prayer. And I have finally decided I'm going to have to let God, this is their spiritual life.
Yeah.
It's not going to look exactly like I want their spiritual life to look like. And that's still some things I'm working out at this moment in time where I'm just having to pray over. And God just keeps reminding me that I have poured it into them. It's there.
Yeah.
I planted those seeds as children. I nurtured it. I taught them. I showed them. That was the most important thing.
Yeah.
When they were younger, it was like, teach them, teach them, teach them. And then as they started getting older, I started having to realize I got to show them. I have to show them in my life. I have to model it.
Yeah.
I have to be, if I'm going to talk the talk, I'm going to have to be walking the walk. If these are the things I want to see in their lives, I want them to see that in mine.
Yeah.
And so now as they're older, I think I share a lot more with them about what I'm praying for them. Where in the past, that's just mine and God's time and I'm telling him. But now as they're getting older, I think I'm making it more aware to them what I'm praying for them and learning to pray it and let God guide them now.
I heard something the other day. It was like something about like your child's testimony. It's like, as moms, we want to protect them from so much, but it's like you have to let God's testimony work its way out in them. And that was hard for me because I am so type A and I want to protect and I want to keep them safe. But I'm like, man, like God's going to do something in them that's, Lord willing, will, direct people to follow Jesus. So it's like, I can't interfere with that process. And I'm sure that is so hard because I only have littles, but I feel like that was good poured into me of like, okay, take a step back. We're working on a lot of behaviors right now. And so it's like, just let those things work out, pray with them, but ultimately like let God do his thing.
Yeah. And because I've said this, I think a time or two before, but having control over them, like it's letting that control, but we got to do it. And that is very good what you just said. I mean, their testimony is something God wants to mold and make. And I can't be trying to mold and make it what I want their testimony to look like. And so letting loose of that as they've gotten older is difficult. It is difficult. Yeah. But I do know that's what God wants. But it's difficult to do we're human.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy because as I sit here listening to each of us talk about this, it's like every stage in your child's life has its own challenges. So when they were little babies and toddlers, we do have so much control over what their day looks like. And like being in the trenches, I think where you originated this question. Yeah. Some of that you just have to give up or you're going to make yourself crazy. Yes. I don't think when my kids were really little, I was not on Pinterest. Yeah. So I had the blessing that I wasn't trying to have a Pinterest perfect home. So, we could just play and kind of deal with them. It's up to your personality. Can you deal with leaving the toys out some, or do you need it to be picked up before you can rest at night? Yeah. But then as they age, each stage, you think like, oh, when they're infants, it's so hard because you're not getting enough sleep. But then you get up to middle school and you're like, whoa, this is way harder. The hormones start taking effect. And like, I can even remember going through stages with our girls where they would say something and then later they would be remorseful. And they're like, I knew I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. But it came out anyway. Yeah. And so then you have to deal with grace. You need to say, I've been there too. We've all been teenagers and it is hard. Middle school is difficult. And then they get to be high schoolers and they start driving and they have friends. They want to go in places with their friends. They want to get into a vehicle with other teenagers, right? It gives you chills just to think about wait a minute. I can't even think about that. And so then their lives become busier and you have to determine, okay, what am I going to take a stand on? What are the battles that I'm drawing the line? Yeah. And is it because I'm drawing the line because, like Carla said, I'm worried about what other people are going to think about my parenting decisions? Or am I drawing the line because as the parent, I feel like this is what's most important to me? That's good. Yeah. And those are really hard things to discern when you're in the trenches. Yeah. I know that we didn't always make the best decisions because I've never lived in a big city, but even in a small community, especially, you feel like every thing that you do is under a magnifying glass. And it may not be, but at the time it feels that way. Yeah. And then our girls are also, young adults now. Like Carla was saying, the college years, they have their own set of trials. And then when they're out of your house, they get to make their own decisions. Yeah. And they may not want your opinions on it. Yeah. And that's something that my husband has really tried to help me accept. And he'll say, she wasn't asking for your opinion. You can keep it. I'm like, no, I want to give it, but I would have really given it to you. Yeah. So, it's just every age, every stage has its own challenges. And I feel like I really don't know how parents do it when they don't have a relationship with God. Yeah. Because I feel like parenting is something that has drawn me so much closer to the Lord. Like, I can't do this on my own. There's been tears and just times when I've been like, God, you've got to help us to know how to walk through this with them. Yeah.
And, I will say too, y'all, your kids are like in their 20s, I guess. And so when you said that about that you don't always have to give your opinion, even though you think your opinion's right.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know me. Right. If they would just listen to me, it would be right. They would learn and they would avoid, some things. But I will say, though, I've had to learn to keep, my opinion to myself sometimes and to give up the control, especially like you said, when they're out of your home. And so I have found too that there are some times when you do keep your opinion to yourself, you don't say anything, you just let them talk and just let them talk. Sometimes they can figure it out on themselves. Sometimes they can't. And they're not making a good decision. But you know what, I have to realize that that's their decision. They're an adult. That's their decision. But I will say that there does come a time, and I know it's probably different in each home situation, that your parenting changes and you can become their friend. I'm still their parent. Yeah. They still look to me as their parent, but it's also a friendship that develops and they will at some point need your opinion and will want your opinion. Yeah. And will feel free to come talk to you if they don't feel like you're always just saying, well, if you would just do this, it would be okay. Because sometimes if they would just do that, it still won't be okay. Yeah. But I do think it will change. And I love the season that I'm in right now, because my grandchildren are your children's age, and sometimes there again, I'm praying for my grandchildren, and Beth, you don't got to tell them every time, and you don't got to match make, and you don't got to say, if you would just, follow this, it'll be fine. So I have had, with my grandchildren, I have to learn to step back and just say, God, I've seen you work, and I know you're going to work in this.
That's good. All right. So we talked about, your adult children. So how have your prayers for your adult children changed from what you prayed for them when they were little to now as adults?
I would say that I still have some of those same prayers, of course, about their spiritual walk, about their relationship with Jesus. Those are some of the same things, and then, of course, there was career decisions and those kind of things that I prayed over and still pray for some of mine. And then out of all three of my children, none of them have a significant other. And so I have came into that season of, okay, there's always been praying for the right person to come into their life at some point in time. But I think they're all now at a place where they all kind of are wanting that, and or maybe I'm wanting it more than they. But
you want to do matchmaking like Miss Beth?
But I would just listen to you. They would just But everybody I throw out there is like, Mom, stop doing that. We will find her person. But so those are some of my prayers at the moment in time. Or you want them to find that right person, and I want it to be somebody that I really do want it to be somebody that God places in their lives. So me and Guy go back and forth about that. Like, why can't you?
Whereas I tell my prayers right now for Jax are like, Lord, would you please give him self-control? Would you give him peace and a sound mind so he make really good choices? And we're focused at school today. At school is our one goal. And then obviously, because he's been asking some really great questions lately. Like even at 4 years old, like the other day, he was asking about heaven. And he was like, well, tell me about heaven. Who's in heaven? And, we talk about heaven when you make that choice to follow Jesus. And he was like, well, how do you do that? And so I told him, I said, that's when, you ask God to lead your life, lead your heart. And then all of a sudden he's like copying what I'm saying. He's like, okay, I'm gonna go to heaven now. And I was like, well, baby, it takes a little bit more than that. But even at 4 years old, and I think it just goes back to the kind of thing you guys said about that watching your kids watch you daily, how you interact with God. I feel like I'm like, Lord, hopefully those seeds are being planted, but I do because he's asking those really good questions. So yeah, my prayers are just like, Lord, can we please just give Jackson self-control in the classroom today?
That won't stop. Yeah, it's going to continue on, and saying good decisions, that keeps on.
So those prayers don't change.
No.
Gotcha. Those are some that are this the daily. Here we are again.
God, hey God, it's me, Carla. We're back at it.
Here we go. Do you know what I said yesterday? We're going to pick up right there.
And sometimes I rephrase it. Like thinking, maybe you didn't get it. Yeah, you didn't get it. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
What about you, Elise? Anything that, maybe you've seen your prayers change from when they were little to now, even for you with now you're a great Mimi. So even with that, what are some things maybe you're praying right now?
I think probably, I've seen my kids. They're all saved. They have Christian homes. They're trying to raise their children. So I think for mine, as far as for my children, I'm praying that God will just give them wisdom in raising their own children, and I see that they follow some of the same things.
Okay. Cool.
I'm like, okay, I know in the podcast I did before about with the song, I trust in God, and the part that says, I sought the Lord and he heard and he answered. I just look at my life, our life from when our kids were little till now, and I can think of prayers that I have prayed since they were little. And then especially as they got to be these adults, I've still prayed those prayers. And now I can look at it and I see, oh, wow, God, I see how you're working in that. You're answering that, It may not be exactly like I thought it was going to be, but I've seen how God has answered those prayers. And I think that when you are a Christian parent and you're praying for your children, those prayers can change. Like you said, what kind of prayers, those prayers can change. But the essence of those prayers,
that's so good.
That doesn't change, because what we want is for our children to have a close personal relationship with God. And I believe he will work in their lives because you planted seeds. He will work in their lives to bring that about. Mm-hmm. And it can be through hard times. Mm-hmm. It can be through things that you would never have wanted for your children. Mm-hmm. But God even uses those times to say, okay, you've worked it your way. How's that going? You know? Yeah. And so he will interject himself into their lives. I read something the other day about I can't remember now. I think it was Elijah. Okay. And he was hidden in the rock and God passed by with the storm and the earthquake, and God wasn't in that, but God was in the whisper. You know, I heard the whisper. And I thought there's been so many times when I've prayed things for my children and I've said, okay, well, you know, what they're going through now, that will surely turn them around. You know, nope. That's not the way it happens. Yeah. God works in his own time. And it might be through a quiet little whisper or something that he reveals to them that turns them and they say, oh, yeah, you know what Mom and Daddy taught me, it's real. Yeah. It is real, you know, but they have to experience it for themselves.
Yeah. I have a question. Do you guys write down any of your prayers? Like, do you like a prayer journal where you've like written down and like had God when you answered it?
I've tried that over the years and I just can't seem to stick to it. I'm not good at it.
That was something Bray and I had said this year was honestly even like taking a moment to even write down those prayers and actually tried, again, keyword is try to have like documentation of like what those things are. Because same thing, I can look back even at just my short 30, almost 36 years of life and I can see where God, again, interjects himself in such a small, still, sweet way. And there were prayers that were answered. They may not have been answered the way I want them to be answered, but it definitely molded and shaped me. And I don't know, it just like popped in my head if you guys.
I hope you're able to do that because that would be so sweet to look back on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do like my quiet time is journaling. I do journal like a lot because I almost have to like get all the junk out first before I can even have time with God. And so I do try whenever I have a moment to actually write out, dear Lord, thank you for this. And then it turns into like, I need your help with this. And then lately, this is probably the last maybe 2 years I've done it, I've been able to go back and see what I was facing a year ago. I'm like, man, God's actually like, look how he's worked. So I was much better at it. Sweet little Lucy, you know, 11 months, so she got me a little busy. But that is something that I've like, tried to do. So would love to ask you ladies, during your motherhood journey, do you have any older women or mentors in your life that kind of just poured into you during those like really hard seasons? And how has that affected and impacted the way you view discipleship?
That's a deep question. So at our previous church, I was in a ladies' Sunday school class. And those are some of the best times in my motherhood journey when the girls were small.
Yeah.
We had Kathy Jones. Miss Beth was there for a while.
Okay.
Karen Kuhn.
Okay.
Marie Goss. I know I'm going to leave some ladies out, but I just felt like during that time with the girls being little and up through elementary age that those ladies were able to kind of listen and not judge.
Yeah.
And give a perspective on it that I wasn't able to see during that time.
That's so good.
And then the other part of this question that I feel like has been important in my life is not only having women that were older than me to be like, hey, we've walked through this. It's going to be okay. But also having women the same age.
Okay.
Who are also Christians that are your safe place that, you know, you can, because I don't know anybody whose kids are perfect. Yeah. But you also don't get that deep look into everybody's lives, as we shouldn't.
Yeah.
But to have a few close girlfriends that you can say like, man, I'm really struggling and here's why.
Yeah.
And you know that they're going to protect your family, your heart, and your secrets.
Yeah.
The things you're struggling with. And they're going to pray with you through it. Man, that's valuable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What about you ladies? Any women that maybe have poured into you? And then how have you guys also viewed mentorship now that you're kind of out of the trenches of, I mean, you're never out of the trenches, but you know, your perspective on motherhood has shifted a little bit.
Well, when I got married young, at the time we had a young pastor and his wife that were new to the previous church I was at. She was probably, I think she's maybe like 12 years older than me. But she had young children, and it was my first, because I had grew up in church, but it was my first time getting a real look at that we don't have to be perfect. And she guided me through that. I'm a pastor's wife, but we're not living a perfect life. And she poured in a lot of wisdom about being a Christian mother and then or first as a wife. But when I got married, I stepped into motherhood. My husband had a child. And so lots of guidance through her. And I was always very close to my mother. She was a young mother. We kind of, so her guidance and then my friend Renee. So as a young mother, young wife, those two poured into me a lot. And then just as Cara said, as you get older, you have those friendships that you've built. And some of them you meet when your kids become friends.
I love it.
And some of them we meet on Bahamas trips and, all those kind of things. Right. I've looked back a lot of times and look how God orchestrated that, Those are some of the people in my life that are still with me now. And I know that I could text them out, a little Janice Camp comes to my mind. You could text her at any moment in time. And I know without a doubt that she's praying.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And her husband. And so those kind of people that God just orchestrated, like I knew who they were, but I didn't get to know them until I was on a mission trip with them.
Yeah.
And I would say presently, right now, that she has become very important in my prayer life and with my family. But there's so many other women through my life. But I just love how God orchestrates and puts the right people in your life at the right season of life. Because, the things that we're praying about are still some things that like Janice is praying about now. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Those things just get me all kind of like, how great he is.
One thing you said that I love, though, is it does take you, and like you said, the same thing, Cara, was just being vulnerable. I think that's, and realizing like you're not perfect, but having those people that know you're not perfect and it's okay. And I think that can be a struggle with moms and just women in general, is we have to be perfect. And if we show our flaws, then what worth do we have? But I think that's the beauty in the gospel and the beauty in just the church itself, is like you have women that want to rally around you, that want to pour into you, but it also just shows the importance of community, whether it's a small group, whether it's a group of women you grab coffee with, or you serve alongside. I mean, I think you guys could probably say as well, is a great way, whether it's Bahamas Mission or it's on Cafe in Branford or, kids, whatever it is, it's like you have to do life with other people to build those relationships, because then you want to be able to be vulnerable and open and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. What are some things you can pour into me? Or I think prayer is one of those things too. Like so many people say, well, what can I do? It's like, no, praying is like the best thing you can do. That's what you need. And you need those prayer warriors in your group. So I love that you said that, and how it's like just different phases of life, different events that God throws them into your life for a reason for that. Yeah. What about you, Miss Beth?
Well, I think what Cara and Carla both said about having women of different ages, I think that's important. I think you don't always have to look for the woman who is older. You can have somebody who's your age. You can have people who are younger than you, that walk the walk that God has ordained for them, and they become friends. And it is important, as something that Cara said, is that, you've got those friends that that you can share with, and that who won't speak out beyond you two. And I can think right now of a friend that I have that I don't even see her hardly ever, and yet we keep in touch. She's in another state, but I first came to know her when we were in our very first church. Okay. And I was 19, and she was only like, at that time, she might have been 13, something. And of course, we didn't have that same kind of relationship. But as the years grew and we moved, and her and her husband's ministry actually took them to the same church that we were at. And we just became such close friends. And even to this day, she's one of those that I know I can call and say, hey, I am really going through a hard time right now. Explain the whole thing. She'll listen. And then, she may not say anything right then, but she said, I will pray. And then, but we stay in touch. Yeah. And then, of course, my mom was probably the biggest influence in my life. Yeah. And there would be times, though, that when I was younger, I'd say, I was the one thinking, Mom, you need to keep that to yourself. I'm doing the best I can, and I don't need that right now, But she was probably the most godly woman that I believe that I've had the privilege of having her in my life. Yeah. Because I saw her walk through some really, really tough times when my father was sick, and when her mother died, and when And then she remarried. And when he passed away, and I just saw her walk a steadfast, continuous walk with the Lord, no matter what she was going through and what she was facing. And I thought, after you don't see it necessarily at the time, but when it's all said and done, and then you look back and you think, that's the kind of woman I want to be.
Yeah. No, that's so good. So the last question I have for you ladies is, if you were to look back on kind of your kids at really any age, what was one thing that you did with your children that you're so glad you did? And what is one thing that you wish you would have worried less about?
Can I go first?
Absolutely. You were ready for this.
I was ready. So I liked this question so much that I texted it to both of our girls.
Oh, wow.
Because I wanted their responses.
Yes.
And so our oldest said that the one thing that she felt like she was glad that I did as her mom was, no matter what, like if you went through a heartbreak or didn't do so well at whatever sport you were in, you messed up during the game or maybe your grades, like I gave them a day. You have the day. You can wallow in it, feel all those feelings.
That's good.
You want M&Ms, you want ice cream. We'll sit here. We're going to have a pity party.
Yeah.
For a day.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're going to dry your tears. You're still going to have feelings, but you're not going to let them control you. You're going to
That's good.
put yourself together. Yeah. You're going to go back out and face the world.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Which I was surprised when she said that, when she texted me back. And it was immediate when I asked.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she said, she still uses that advice to this day.
That's good. That is good.
And then our youngest, her response was that she was glad to be raised Southern because she gets compliments on her manners. Okay. She knows how to use manners and how to hold conversations. And she gets complimented by that from people that are older. Oh, I wasn't expecting to say her.
So important, but I think it goes back to the whole like sitting and having a dinner conversation. Ray and I have a rule, like we don't have our phones out. It's like you look at the person. Yes. How is your day? And then if you have a follow-up questions and then your manners, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, which, when we took Jax back to Nebraska, they don't use the yes, ma'am, no, sir. And they're like, oh, that's so proper. And I was like, well, that's what we do in the South.
Hey, that's right.
Southern baby, you love it. So I love that. That's really cool.
I mean, I can remember when they were in middle and high school, making them make phone calls. Because that was a big deal. Like, oh, no.
Calling the doctor. I remember my mom was like, you're going to call the doctor and you're going to make your dentist appointment. Or even now we make Jax order his food at the dinner table. I'm like, and he would say, may I please have, that was one thing my cousin said that she made her kids do. She's like, teach them how to order and look at the person, not look at their phone, and like actually look at the person and and then say thank you. And then thank for,
those are skills they need.
Yes.
The one thing that came to my mind was that I felt that I gave them a sense of adventure. Like it's okay to explore your dreams and get out of the nest, so to speak, go see what the world has to offer. Because we're always going to be here and a safe place for you to land if you need it.
Yeah.
And they both agreed with that too. When our oldest was a senior in high school, she left right after graduation and went over to St. Augustine and spent the summer there instead of like a family trip. She went and did that. And she said without that, she would have never been brave enough to move away from Branford as an adult.
Yeah.
And our youngest went off to college and now she's getting ready to move to Texas.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's real far.
So that's, going to be needing some prayer.
Got you, girl. Writing it down now. Is there anything that you wish you would have worried about less?
I do. And all three of us agreed that we can see now, looking back, that I wish I would have worried less about what other people were going to think. Like Miss Beth had said earlier, you're so worried. And like Carla said, like they're a representation of you, but they're also humans. They're going to make mistakes.
That's so good. Yeah.
And as I was thinking about your question this morning, I was thinking about a quote that I've seen, or it's something about the people that matter won't mind and the people that mind don't matter. Like those people people are going to talk. Yeah. That's human nature. But the people that matter in your life are going to understand that your children are going to make mistakes and they're going to grow through it and they're going to learn from it and they're going to still come out on the other side of it.
That's so good.
That is good.
So good. What about you?
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of that. I really, if I would start out by saying what I wish I hadn't have done would be the worrying, about what people thought. And I wish that I would have gotten that concept of God's building their testimony.
Yeah.
I wished I would have thought about that really, especially in their teenage years and getting into that, going into college and those latter years there, because I feel like that was when I worried the most about that, because they're out venturing and they're making their own choices. And that is one thing I always told my kids I can just remember all the way through when we'd have family discussions around the table, which that would be one of my things that I think that was something I wanted to do. I wanted to make that a very big part of our home and our life. And we had lots of discussions about things. And I always wanted it to be open conversation. I never want my kids to be feeling like they couldn't share something.
That's so good. Yeah.
And that's where we did it a lot of times at the dining room table. And when they had tough questions that what happens if I was to do this? What do you think about that? That's when we had those tough decisions. And I wish then that I would have been thinking more about their testimony and what God's created instead of trying to, I always tried to guide them what I thought God would have me do, of course. But there was also some of that parental control going on of what, I had that in there. I mean, honestly, I did. But so those are some things. I mean, and I also think that, there's different decisions you make through them growing up that I look back and I'm thinking, I probably should have just let that go and worried more about, things that were probably, more what God would want them to do. But through it all, I think I wanted my children to be who God created them to be. I have 3 different children that are totally, there's 2 boys that have some similarities, but I have a girl that's completely wildly different than those 2 boys. And my middle son, he took me like pushing him to do things. And so I feel like that was a good thing. Like I had to push him into doing some things to get him to do things. But I look back now and those were things that needed to be done to create who God really wanted him to be. And Kinley was, more of like, bring it back just a little bit. I'm not sure. Bring it back. But I'm in that stage where I can look at their lives now and think, God created them to be that way. And now he's using them to build out what he has planned for them. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, those are mine.
That's awesome. I love that. What about you, Miss Beth?
I guess the things being glad that I did with the kids was having just time with them when I feel like, I spent the spiritual time with them, and I hate to say it like that because really, when I look back, I think, well, that should be all the time. But you know what I mean? Those specific times, with them and trying to pour into them what I felt like God was leading as far as having an intimate relationship. That's what I always wanted. I think one of the things that maybe I wished I wouldn't have done in regards to that is that sometimes I look back and I think, did I teach them more how to be a good church person, a member, or did I teach them about the intimacy with Jesus? And I do think showing our children that church is important, I think it is important because when they do stray, if they have a time when they stray away, I think that they'll say, I think in their mind, sometimes they think, I need to get back to church. And I think for me, I want that to be positive. I wanted that to be positive for them. And I have seen that happen. But anyway, as far as, those kind of things about being happy that I did, I think. And another thing I thought about this was that we played with our kids. I had a good mom that showed me how to do that because even when we were children, my mom would get out in the yard and she would play with us, and she would build these rope swings, she showed me all that, And so with our kids, I wanted us to have fun, just have fun with them, and I think we did. For the most part, we have fun. Of course, I probably have to ask them. And then I guess it was kind of like a wish I had done. Is that was the other part of the question? Maybe just let them be more of themselves instead of trying to interject what I thought, let them be more of themselves. But other than that, I don't think I have any real regrets, as far as that. I mean, I don't have any regrets other than just, let God have control of them. And again, like they said, don't worry so much about what people think. Because the people who really know you and they really care about you and they care about your children, they're going to know that it's just a season. It's just a time, and we all go through those. I don't care how good a Christian you are, if that's the way you want to say it. You're going to have seasons when it's tough. It just is. So, you just got to give it to the Lord. And I heard Actually, on the way over, I was listening to Eddie's podcast he's doing James Nay, and just a little plug, it's really good.
Yeah, it has been good. It has been good.
The intro and outro has a really catchy voice too.
She's doing a great job.
She's doing a great job.
So anyway, but one of the things he said, and I don't even know if I'm behind, he'd say, did you hear that? And I was like, oh, give me a couple of days. But one of the things he said was that we always need to have a teachable spirit. Mm. And I thought, that is so, I don't want to tell him, that was really good. But it is good. Even at this stage of my life, I still want to have a teachable spirit. Yeah. And for God just to show me himself and show me, more even how I can pray for my children. Give me specific, God. Mm-hmm. Let me be specific in these prayers. And not just, take care of them as they travel, which is a good one to pray. Yeah. But just pray for their daily lives, and for me to always be teachable.
Yeah, that's so good. Oh, my goodness. Well, ladies, any other lasting thoughts or words you want to share with our listeners?
I think motherhood has the ability to humble you in so many ways. But it also is something that, if you allow it, can bring you closer to God than you've ever been.
That's so good. That's so good. Man, you ladies are so special. Thank you so much for just taking time just to share with our listeners about motherhood, life, all the things. And thank you for just y'all's unique, special relationship to the Orchard and what you do day in and day out. We really, really appreciate you ladies. Well, thank you for listening to today's podcast with our Branford Momcast. Next week, we'll have our Live Oak moms on, and it's going to be another really great conversation. And I am excited to just see how God's going to use it with our listeners. But in the meantime, have a great week, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About That. We hope it encouraged and challenged you as we continue to grow on this journey of faith and embrace community together. If you have more questions, thoughts, or feedback, we want to hear from you. Be sure to reach out to us through our social media or visit our website to stay connected. If you found today's discussion meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Until next time, we hope that this episode inspired you and will keep Sunday's message at the front of your mind. See you next week.